There's a player sitting in Indiana Fever training camp right now who shot 42.2% from three in her final college season, stands 6'4" with a 7-foot wingspan, and just held her own against the New York Liberty in her very first professional game. She's exactly the kind of player rival front offices dream about finding. And Indiana has her sitting on a contract that could hand her to an enemy team the moment a 2-week window expires. This isn't a story about a player who slipped through the cracks on draft night. Justine Pat was drafted deliberately. Indiana knew exactly who she was when they selected her. What makes this situation genuinely alarming isn't that the Fever took a chance on an unproven prospect. It's that they took a chance on a finished product and then treated her like she wasn't one. No public commitment from the front office, no signal they're moving toward converting her deal, just silence while the clock they built themselves runs down on their own pick. Rival teams are already watching. And Justine Pat has already told anyone paying attention exactly where she stands. The question now is whether Indiana is actually listening. To understand why this situation is as serious as it is, you have to understand who Justine Pat actually is as a player, because the way Indiana has handled her contract simply doesn't match what she put on the court at Vanderbilt. In her final college season, Pat averaged 11.1 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 2.3 assists per game. She did that while shooting 42.2% from three on 6.6 attempts per game, a rate that ranked 7th in all of women's college basketball that year. Those aren't developmental numbers. Those are the numbers of a player who already figured out how to perform at a high level and was doing it consistently against real competition night after night. But the percentages alone don't tell the full story. The physical profile is what makes her genuinely rare. At 6'4", with a 7-foot wingspan, Pat occupies a space in basketball that almost nobody else does. Most forwards, built like her in college, are living in the post, catching entry passes, battling for position, protecting the rim on the other end. Pat spent her time at Vanderbilt pulling defenders all the way out to the arc and making them pay for every lapse in attention. Scouts across the league described her jump shot as one of the purest releases in the entire draft class. For a player her size, that's not just unusual. It's the kind of rare that franchises spend years trying to find. She's talked openly about the work that built it. While others were out, she was in the gym, hours on ball handling, hours watching film. She understood early that being known purely as a shooter wasn't going to be enough at the professional level, that she had to keep adding dimensions to survive. That kind of self-awareness in a young player is exactly what coaches look for when they're trying to separate the players with a real future from the ones who plateau. She didn't arrive at Indiana Fever training camp as a raw prospect, hoping someone would take a chance on her. She arrived as someone who had already done the work, already built the skill set, and was ready to show what it meant against professional competition. The development contract waiting for her didn't reflect any of that. And that disconnect is exactly where this whole situation starts to unravel. Indiana made history when they signed Pat to a development contract. They were the first franchise in WNBA history to use one under the new collective bargaining agreement. On the surface, that sounds like an interesting footnote. In practice, what it means for Pat is significantly more complicated than a line in the record books. Here's how the deal actually works. Under the new CBA, a development contract allows a player to practice with the team, appear in up to 12 games during the season, and it doesn't count against the salary cap. For a young player trying to crack a roster, that might sound reasonable on paper. You get reps, you get film, you get a chance to prove yourself in a professional environment without the team having to commit a full roster spot right away. But the contract also includes a 14-day exclusivity window. During those 2 weeks, no other team in the league can contact Pat or anyone representing her. Indiana has her locked in completely. The moment those 14 days expire, though, everything changes. Any team in the league can call her agent and put a standard contract on the table. All Indiana gets at that point is the right of first refusal, meaning they can either match the offer and convert her to a standard deal, or they can watch her sign somewhere else. That's not a safety net for the player. That's a countdown clock the Fever built themselves and essentially handed to every rival scout paying attention. The critical context here is what the development contract was actually designed for. This mechanism exists in the CBA for players who genuinely need time. Raw prospects who aren't ready for professional competition yet and need a structured environment to develop before earning a permanent spot. That's the population this contract was built around. Pat shot 42.2% from 3 in college, immediately produced against the Liberty in her professional debut, and has one of the most polished shooting profiles in her entire draft class. She is not a player who needs 2 years of practice reps to figure out if she belongs at this level. So, using a development slot on her isn't really about developing her. It's about Krauskopf and Cox maintaining roster flexibility without committing a permanent spot. They want the option without paying the full price for it. And in doing so, they've set a clock running on a player that multiple other franchises would sign immediately. Whatever questions remained about whether Pat was ready to compete professionally, the New York Liberty answered most of them in the first preseason game of her career. She played 10 minutes. In those 10 minutes, she scored 8 points on 2 of 4 shooting, hitting 2 of her 3 three-point attempts against the New York Liberty, a team with the length and physicality that routinely makes young players look completely out of place at this level. The Liberty frontcourt attacks mismatches aggressively, plays through contact, and their length makes clean looks genuinely hard to find for anyone who isn't physically ready to handle professional competition. Pat went out there on a development deal in her very first professional appearance and knocked shots down anyway. 8 points in 10 minutes against that group isn't luck, it's information. What the Liberty game actually revealed goes well beyond the box score. Her physical tools aren't a projection anymore. A 7-foot wingspan at 6'4" means she can release the ball over defenders that most forwards in this league simply cannot shoot over. And her ability to switch onto perimeter players without getting completely exposed is real in a way that doesn't always translate for players her size. Length covers mistakes while a player is still learning a new defensive system, and Pat has enough of it that her early errors didn't turn into easy buckets on the other end. On offense, that same size and reach is what makes her shot so hard to contest. She doesn't need a perfect catch and a step back to create separation. She catches, rises, and the ball clears whoever is standing in front of her before they can even react. Scouts who watched that Liberty game came away specifically talking about how quickly her release triggers, how she doesn't seem to register the contest because by the time the defender moves, the shot is already in the air. Some scouts have drawn physical comparisons to Breanna Stewart when discussing her dimensions, not about her current level of play, but about the body type. Long, versatile, capable of defending multiple positions while shooting from anywhere on the floor. That's the ceiling currently sitting on a development deal. Aaliyah Boston noticed. She spoke publicly after the Liberty game about what a shooting forward does for everyone else on the floor. That's not a scouting evaluation. That's your starting center telling the front office she wants this player out there with her. Count the perimeter players on Indiana's projected roster. Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull, Sophie Cunningham, Tasha Harris, Raven Johnson, Chatori Walker-Kimbrough. That's 7 guards and wing players competing for minutes on a 12-person roster. 7 perimeter players and 1 stretch big sitting on a development contract with a ticking clock attached to it. Walker-Kimbrough is a real player. Nobody is questioning that. She dropped 18 points in 22 minutes in the preseason opener and showed she can contribute at this level. But the Fever don't have a perimeter scoring problem. Clark and Mitchell and Hull are already eating up guard minutes, and adding another capable perimeter player to that rotation doesn't address what's actually broken about this roster. Walker-Kimbrough plays the wing. She's not playing the 4. She's one more guard in a rotation that is already stacked with guards fighting for time the established players are going to take anyway. The problem Indiana has carried for years is structural. They don't have a stretch big. A stretch big is a forward whose shooting range forces defenders to guard them out on the perimeter instead of collapsing into the paint. When a team doesn't have one, defenses don't have to make a difficult choice. They simply park a help defender in the lane and make everything in the paint harder than it should be. Aaliyah Boston is one of the best post scorers in the entire league. But when defenses don't have to respect a shooter at the 4 position, they can plant a body directly in her path on every entry pass and take that away from her systematically. Pat solves that problem directly. When she's on the floor and defenders have to account for her 3-point range, they cannot sag into the lane and load up on Clark's driving lanes simultaneously. They can't collapse on Boston's post catches without surrendering open perimeter looks. The whole floor opens because defenses are forced into a choice with no comfortable answer. And there's no comfortable answer when the shooter is 6'4" and releases before most defenders can react. Stephanie White has been clear about what she wants this offense to look like: spacing, pace, forcing collapses, and spraying the ball to open shooters. That entire system requires every spot on the floor to demand defensive respect. When the 4 position isn't a genuine threat, defenses ignore it, and the whole offensive structure quietly starts breaking down. Pat sat down for a recent interview and didn't throw a tantrum. She didn't call anyone out by name. She didn't make any dramatic public statements about her future or criticize how the front office has approached things. She just answered the question honestly. And what she said landed harder than any dramatic statement could have. When asked whether the development contract took some of the pressure off, she gave a straightforward answer. Her goal, she said, is still to make a 12-player roster. Not the Indiana Fever's 12-player roster, a 12-player roster. That single word is doing enormous work. Anyone in league circles who heard that interview understood immediately what she meant. She is not sitting in training camp focused entirely on earning a permanent spot with this specific franchise at any cost. She's thinking about making a professional roster, full stop. And if Indiana isn't going to be the team that gives her a standard contract and real minutes, she and her camp will have conversations with teams that will. She said directly that the development deal doesn't really take the pressure off, because the pressure was never specifically about making Indiana's roster. It's about making a roster, period. The development contract gives her a place to train and a chance to appear in games, but it doesn't give her what she actually came to the WNBA for: real minutes, a real contract, a real shot at competing for something meaningful alongside players she's already been grinding with every day in that gym. She's not coming into this league to practice 5 days a week, appear in 11 games over the course of a season, and have her professional future determined by whether a front office decides to exercise a right of first refusal before a clock runs out. She said as much herself, in the most measured and professional way possible, without pointing a finger at anyone. Reports suggest her camp has been watching the exclusivity window closely, and that once it closes without a commitment from Indiana, they'll be prepared to hear from other teams. That's not a public ultimatum. That's a player and her representatives understanding exactly what leverage they have and being ready to use it if the situation calls for it. The development deal protects Indiana's options. It doesn't protect hers. And based on everything she said, Pat knows the difference clearly. The teams being mentioned in connection with Pat's situation are not franchises scrambling to fill roster spots with anyone available. Seattle, Dallas, and Washington have all surfaced in discussions about where she might land if Indiana's exclusivity window closes without a commitment. All 3 have genuine roster needs at the 4 position. None of them would spend much time debating whether a 6'4" shooter with verified production against WNBA-level competition is worth a standard contract. The moment that window closes and Pat becomes reachable, any of those front offices can contact her agent and put an offer on the table. And that conversation becomes very real very quickly when a player of her profile is sitting there, available on the open market. Indiana still holds the right of first refusal. In theory, that means they can match any outside offer and keep her. In practice, that protection only works if they actually use it. And there has been no public signal from the Fever front office that they're moving in that direction. No statements, no reported internal commitment, and just the sound of a clock running that Indiana set themselves. Reports have suggested the front office may have already quietly committed to certain roster spots, which would mean Walker Kimbrough's position is more secure than anyone has acknowledged publicly. If that's accurate, it means Krauskopf and Cox have essentially already decided to keep the redundant guard and let the development contract situation resolve itself. Right of first refusal and all. They'd be betting they can scramble to match an outside offer after weeks of silence and have Pat not hold any of it against them. Think about what that looks like from her perspective. Another franchise steps up first, puts genuine commitment on the table, and makes it clear they want her. Then the team that drafted her rushes to match only after being forced into action. That's not how you build trust with a player you're asking to buy into a championship vision. That's not how you make someone feel genuinely valued in a program that's supposed to be building towards something real. And if Pat ends up in Seattle or Dallas on a standard deal, she's not just gone from Indiana's roster. She's developing in another system, building chemistry with another team's stars, and potentially becoming the exact stretch big that makes a rival franchise harder to beat in the playoff matchups Indiana needs to win in 2026. The part of this story that gets lost in all the contract discussion is everything that's already been built inside that training facility before any official roster decisions get made. Pat has been in the gym every single day with Lexi Hull, Sophie Cunningham, and the veterans who set the standard and the culture for this program. That work matters in ways that don't show up in any contract calculation. Chemistry between players doesn't get constructed on a theoretical timeline where someone's future with a team is genuinely uncertain. It gets built through daily competition, through trust that develops when players are grinding together towards something real with a shared purpose behind it. Boston has made her position on this about as clear as a teammate can without stepping directly into front office territory. She said publicly that there's nothing better than having a post player who shoots the ball at that level. That's not a diplomatic compliment extended to a young player trying to survive a roster cut. That's your starting center, one of the best post scorers in the entire league, telling the people making decisions that she wants this player sharing the floor with her. Boston understands better than most people in that building exactly how defenses are going to attack her post-game, and she's saying out loud that Pat changes the math on those defensive decisions in ways that benefit everyone. Hull and Cunningham have been in the gym with her, too. That kind of daily connection doesn't reset if Pat signs somewhere else. It disappears entirely. Indiana doesn't get to keep the chemistry and let the player walk. She takes everything built in that gym with her, and the Fever start over trying to build something similar with whoever fills that development spot next, from scratch, under a tighter timeline. Krauskopf and Cox have a right of first refusal available to them, but that right only carries real value if they exercise it before the relationship gets damaged by prolonged silence and outside offers showing up first. Players who feel overlooked by their own franchise don't always come back with the same energy, even when the contract numbers match. Pat has already said her goal is to make a roster, not specifically Indiana's. That distinction is more significant than the contract language implies, and the front office would be unwise to assume matching an outside offer automatically fixes what weeks of ambiguity quietly broke. Here's exactly where this stands. Indiana has a 6'4" forward who shot 42.2% from three at Vanderbilt, put up 8 points in 10 minutes against the Liberty in her professional debut, and is already building genuine chemistry with the core players this franchise is supposed to be building around. She's sitting on a development contract with a countdown clock. Rivals are watching every practice, and the front office has sent no signal they're moving toward making her a permanent part of this roster. The math isn't complicated. 7 guards on a 12-person roster. 1 stretch big on a ticking development deal. A structural spacing problem that Stephanie White's entire offensive system depends on solving. And the one player who solves it potentially walking out the door because Krauskopf and Cox decided roster flexibility mattered more than locking in their own pick. Indiana drafted her. They watched her perform. And they still chose the option over the commitment. The clock is running. The rival calls are coming. And Justine Pat has already made it clear she's not waiting forever. Whether the Fever figure that out before it's too late is the only question left. And right now, the silence from that front office is not encouraging. Stay locked with my channel Simply Explained for more WNBA updates.